It came true.
3 words. That's all it took. Not a scandal, not a meltdown, not a leaked text or a bad interview. 3 words whispered into a microphone on the biggest night of her career, and the internet decided Anne Hathaway had to go. But here's what makes her story genuinely fascinating. Anne Hathaway never actually did anything wrong, and that might be exactly why people couldn't stand her. She started acting professionally at 16, landed The Princess Diaries at 18, and never really stopped working after that.
Princess Diaries, Ella Enchanted, Brokeback Mountain, The Devil Wears Prada, Rachel Getting Married, The Dark Knight Rises, Les Misérables, Interstellar, The Intern. You've worked with Julie Andrews, Robert De Niro, Meryl Streep, Hugh Jackman.
She went from Disney darling to Devil Wears Prada to Brokeback Mountain, proving every time someone tried to put her in a box that she didn't fit in it. By 2012, she was Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises and Fantine in Les Misérables, both in the same year. She cut her hair, lost 25 pounds, sang live on camera, and cried on command for months. She gave everything she had to that role, and then she won the Oscar for it. And somehow, that's when it all fell apart. The internet unleashed a wave of vitriol the moment she walked off that stage. People mocked her dress, her eyes, her voice, her speech. The term Hathahaters started trending. Think pieces appeared overnight, compiling evidence of her most annoying qualities. The San Francisco Chronicle called her the most annoying celebrity of the year. A New Yorker writer literally published a piece asking, "Why are you so annoying?" And then her own Oscar co-host James Franco went on Howard Stern and said everyone sort of hates Anne Hathaway, which is a really bold thing to say about someone you just shared a stage with, but that's a whole other video. So what exactly was the crime?
There is a venomous hatred towards actresses such as Anne Hathaway.
She is so annoying.
In the early 2010s, Anne Hathaway received a slew of hate propagated by the internet.
Anne Hathaway is not a talented actress. She will win awards
Anne Hathaway
to make you believe she is, but she's actually just a slut.
She was basically disliked for being too perfect and too happy and for enjoying her own success. A 2015 BuzzFeed article summed it up perfectly. When you do everything right and society hates you for it, that's Anne Hathaway syndrome. And honestly, that's one of the most accurate sentences ever written about celebrity culture. The bar for being unlikable in Hollywood is apparently just wanting things and not hiding it well enough. Here's the part nobody talks about, though. She wasn't even happy that night. She told The Guardian she had lost her mind making that movie, and it hadn't come back yet. She was standing on stage in a designer gown, trying to perform happiness she genuinely didn't feel. She spent months starving herself and crying on camera to play a dying woman living in misery, and then 2 weeks later, she had to stand in front of the entire world and act overjoyed. The speech everyone called fake actually was, just not for the reasons they assumed. The internet was right about the wrong thing and never had the self-awareness to notice. And look, the signs were there before the Oscar. The 2011 Oscars hosting gig with James Franco was a disaster that people blamed mostly on her. A writer on that show described it as the world's most uncomfortable blind date between the cool, rocker stoner kid and the adorable theater camp cheerleader. Anne showed up prepared. She went to the writer's house, joined conference calls, responded to emails. Franco was allegedly hard to reach because he was busy taking doctoral classes at Yale. She showed up and he barely showed up at all, and somehow she took the blame for the whole thing. She even admitted later she had turned the gig down first, and Franco talked her into it. Her first instinct was right, and all the reasons she said no came true. Some people learn from their mistakes. Anne Hathaway apparently just has to live through them in front of a global audience. Then, there was 2008, before any of this, when her boyfriend of 4 years was arrested at 6 in the morning on federal fraud charges. Raffaello Folieri had been telling investors he was the Vatican's financial representative, then using their money to fund a lifestyle that included a $37,000 a month apartment and private jets. He kept actual clergy robes in his office. For atmosphere, presumably, he pleaded guilty and got 4.5 years in federal prison. Anne was not charged with anything. She cooperated with investigators. Most people would need at least a long weekend after their boyfriend turned out to be a fake Vatican CFO. Anne Hathaway found out and was on a plane to Mexico for a press tour within days, smiling for cameras and doing interviews like her entire life hadn't just exploded. The thing about Anne Hathaway is that the hate never had a reason. It had a vibe, and in 2013, vibes were enough to end careers. Directors were telling her directly, "You're perfect for this role, but I don't know how audiences will accept you because of all this baggage." An Oscar winner with baggage, all because she seemed too happy to have won it. You genuinely cannot make that up. The word that kept showing up was performative. She was too rehearsed, too grateful, too aware of her own moment. But here's the thing, nobody wanted to say out loud. Every single person in that room was performing. That's literally what actors do. The difference was that Anne looked like she meant it, and meaning it had somehow become embarrassing. James Franco, her co-host, the guy who showed up to the Oscars looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, walked away from that night mostly unscathed. Anne, who had prepared, who had done the work, who had shown up ready to give the audience a good show, got labeled manic and exhausting. Franco told David Letterman she was so energetic the Tasmanian Devil would look stoned standing next to her. The audience laughed. Anne called him afterward and politely suggested a whirling dervish was a more flattering comparison, which is honestly the most Anne Hathaway response imaginable, and I mean that as a compliment. Christopher Nolan cast her in Interstellar in 2014, and she says he saved her career. She doesn't even know if he realized he was doing it. He just wanted the actress. He didn't care what the comment section thought, and that one decision gave her enough breathing room to wait the whole thing out. Because that's what she did. She waited. She didn't post a tearful apology video. She didn't go on a redemption press tour. She didn't fight it. When someone asked why she'd been so absent in 2013, she said her impression was that people needed a break from her. And then she smiled and moved on. That's not weakness. That's someone who understood the game better than the people playing it against her. The Hatha-haters are very quiet right now, because Anne Hathaway is currently one of the busiest actresses in Hollywood. Devil Wears Prada 2, a Christopher Nolan film, a war drama with Adam Driver. The woman they tried to bury under think pieces and Twitter pylons has more projects in the pipeline than most people half her age. She never canceled anyone. She never clapped back. She never made it a bigger story than it needed to be. She just kept working and let everyone else run out of things to say. Which is the coldest revenge available to a person in her position, and she pulled it off without even seeming like she was trying. And maybe that's the most annoying thing about Anne Hathaway. In the end, she won, quietly, patiently, and on her own terms. The internet moved on to someone else. The directors came back. The roles got better, and somewhere out there, every person who wrote a think piece about why she was so insufferable in 2013 is currently buying a ticket to Devil Wears Prada 2 and pretending they were never a hater. We've all been there. Anne Hathaway just made sure she'd still be standing when we got back.